The autumn sunlight streamed through the windows of Boston General Hospital's pediatric ward, which was as busy as any other weekday. Olivia Brown carefully checked the 4-drip rate and smiled gently at the 8-year-old girl lying in bed. "How's the pain?" "A little better." When the girl nodded slightly, Olivia breathed a sigh of relief. She placed her hand on her swollen belly and gently rubbed it in circles. The movement of her 7-month pregnancy made her feel the definite presence of life within. "Brown, you really should go take a break," her colleague Carol Johnson called out. "You're skipping lunch again, aren't you?" Olivia smiled apologetically. "I was so busy I didn't notice." "You need to eat properly for the baby's sake," Carol said with a serious expression. "I bought sandwiches from the cafeteria, let's eat together." As the two sat in the break room, Carol stared intently at Olivia's face. "Have you heard anything lately?" Olivia shook her head. "Nothing from Jason. He's been gone for 2 months now." She sighed deeply. She still remembered that day vividly. In her 5th month of pregnancy, when her husband Jason returned from work, he seemed unusually restless. And the next morning, after Olivia had left for work, he packed his bags and left the house. All that remained was a short note: "I need some time away. I think you and the baby will be fine." That was it. "Have you consulted a lawyer?" Carol asked worriedly. "Not yet. Somehow I can't accept it as reality," Olivia answered in a small voice. "We never even talked about divorce or anything." Carol took her hand encouragingly. "If you need anything at all, just say the word. We're all here to support you." "Thank you," Olivia smiled gratefully. "It really helps." After finishing her shift that day, Olivia checked her phone in the hospital parking lot. There were 3 missed calls from her sister Rachel. With a deep sigh, Olivia called her back. "Finally you called," Rachel's voice had an edge of irritation. "Mom's been worried." "I was working," Olivia answered in a tired voice. "Is something wrong?" "It's about the baby shower. Mom wants to have it at our house." Olivia frowned. "Carol's already planning it, so I need to check with her." "But it's a family event, why leave it to someone else?" Rachel's voice was prickly. "Mom will be hurt." Olivia gripped the steering wheel in silence. Since childhood, she and her sister Rachel had been in competition with each other. Especially when it came to their mother Martha's affection, Rachel had always had the upper hand. "I'll think about it," Olivia said before hanging up. Arriving at her apartment, Olivia sank deep into the sofa. Her wedding photo with Jason hung on the wall. He was a medical technician and she was a nurse when they met at the hospital and married 3 years ago. Olivia was drawn to his gentle smile and sincere character, and thought their marriage had been peaceful and happy. She still couldn't forget how delighted he was when they found out she was pregnant. That's why his sudden disappearance made no sense. The phone rang. It was her father, William. Her father, who ran a construction company, had been living separately from her mother for a year, but he and Olivia kept in frequent contact. "How are you doing? Is the baby well?" At her father's kind voice, Olivia felt slightly relieved. "We're both fine, Dad." "Good. I worry about you. How about dinner this weekend?" "Yes, I'd like that." "And?" William hesitated a bit. "I heard from your mother. About the baby shower." Olivia closed her eyes. "I haven't decided anything yet." "You don't have to force yourself. If you don't want it, just say no clearly." "I know. But Mom and Rachel." "Don't worry about those two," William's voice was strong and protective. "If anything happens, I'll be there right away." That's a promise. After hanging up, Olivia began typing a message to Jason. The baby is doing well. We're having a baby shower soon. I wonder if you'll come. Her finger hovered over the send button, but in the end, the message was saved to her drafts folder. The next day, Carol excitedly talked about her plans for the baby shower. It'll be a small but lovely party. Your colleagues from the hospital are coming too. Thank you, Olivia said with heartfelt gratitude. But my mother and sister. We'll invite them too, Carol showed understanding. But we're hosting it. I won't budge on that. That night, Olivia was surprised to see a message from Rachel. Mom and I went shopping for the party. We've prepared wonderful presents, so look forward to it. Olivia replied with a sense of unease. Thank you. Please get in touch with Carol too. Thinking about Rachel made Olivia's heart complicated. Her sister had married Greg 3 years ago and had immediately expressed a desire for children, but she hadn't been able to get pregnant, and fertility treatments hadn't been successful. When Olivia announced her pregnancy, Rachel had congratulated her verbally, but her eyes revealed jealousy. Why do you always get everything first? Rachel had once spat out in a drunken moment. Olivia lay in bed and spoke to her baby. You'll be fine. Mommy will protect you. On Sunday afternoon, gentle sunlight streamed into Olivia's apartment. Colorful balloons and pastel decorations adorned the living room, and a banner reading, "Welcome Baby," hung on the wall. All the preparations for the baby shower had been meticulously arranged by Carol and her friends. Thank you so much for throwing such a lovely party, Olivia said, embracing Carol. Of course, Carol smiled. You're always thinking of others, so today you need to be the center of attention. The doorbell rang, and the first guests arrived. Hospital colleagues arrived one after another with presents, offering warm words to Olivia. And sooner than expected, Martha and Rachel made their appearance. Olivia, are you all right? You look pale, Martha touched her daughter's cheek with a worried expression. But there seemed to be something else lurking in her eyes. I'm fine, Mom, Olivia gently brushed off her mother's hand. Rachel appeared with Greg, carrying a large gift bag. Sister, this is from us, she said brightly, but her voice seemed a little too high-pitched. Greg nodded silently, seeming somewhat uncomfortable. As time passed, the room filled with laughter and conversation. Olivia opened presents, expressing gratitude for the cute baby clothes and necessities. Games began, with everyone participating in Guess the Baby Word and Diaper-Changing Race. However, Olivia occasionally noticed Rachel and Martha whispering together, which made her uneasy. Now, time for a toast, Martha suddenly announced, and sparkling cider was distributed to everyone. Olivia received a non-alcoholic version. Martha raised her wine glass high and stood in the center of the room. Thank you all for gathering today for the baby shower of our beloved daughter, Olivia. Applause erupted from the audience, and Olivia smiled. However, Martha's next words froze her smile. But actually, I have another important announcement today. The atmosphere in the room changed, and silence fell. Carol sent Olivia a glance, wearing a confused expression. As you all know, Olivia is going through a difficult time, Martha continued. Her husband Jason abandoned her and the baby. Olivia gasped. Mom, stop. But Martha ignored her words and raised her voice further. I know how difficult it is to raise a child alone. Especially while working as a busy nurse. Rachel stood next to Martha and smiled. There was a victorious light in her eyes. That's why we, as a family, have made a decision, Martha stared at Olivia. Olivia, give this child to your infertile sister. Your husband ran away, and there's no way you can raise it alone. Surprised voices rose from the audience, and Carol cried out, "Are you kidding?" Olivia was speechless, only able to stare at her mother. Rachel smirked and said, "Mom's right. I'll raise the baby for you. Greg and I will be wonderful parents. Your child won't want for anything." Greg's face was rigid, looking at his wife in bewilderment. He was clearly surprised by this turn of events as well. "This is," Olivia finally managed to say, "insane. This is my baby." "But you're still young," Martha said in a lecturing tone. "You can have more children. This is Rachel's last chance." As the room buzzed with commotion, Martha approached Olivia and reached out toward her belly. "This child belongs to your sister from today." Just as Olivia stepped back, the front door swung open forcefully. And there stood Jason. "That is absolutely unacceptable." His low, resolute voice echoed through the room, and everyone held their breath. Jason, holding a folder of documents in his hand, walked straight toward Olivia. The color drained from Martha and Rachel's faces, and the room was enveloped in complete silence. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes as she stared at Jason in disbelief. The atmosphere in the room was tense. "I'm Jason Brown," he said as if introducing himself. It wasn't directed at the people who already knew him, but rather seemed like an announcement to the situation that had changed during his 2-month absence. "I am Olivia's husband and this child's father." Those words tightened the atmosphere in the room even further. Jason looked thinner than before, but his eyes were filled with strong determination. He stood next to Olivia and placed his hand on her shoulder protectively. "It seems the time has come to explain why I left." Jason scanned the room before fixing his gaze on Rachel. "First, let me be clear. I did not abandon my wife and child. I had to leave to protect them." Martha tried to speak, but Jason raised his hand to stop her. "Rachel, I'll give you a chance to tell the truth. Or should I tell it for you?" Rachel's face turned pale, and she looked at Greg. Greg wore a confused expression, his gaze moving between his wife and brother-in-law. "What are you talking about?" Rachel feigned an innocent voice. "What does your running away have to do with me?" Jason took a deep breath and pulled out several papers from the folder. "These are records of meetings with a lawyer. And this," he took out his smartphone, "is a record of your messages and voicemails." "What's going on?" Greg raised his voice. "Rachel, what is he talking about?" Olivia was confused, looking at Jason with an expression mixed with fear and surprise. "What's happening?" Jason took her hand and held it gently. "I'm sorry, I couldn't tell you. But I think you'll understand once everything is revealed." He manipulated his smartphone screen and turned the speaker to maximum volume. What flowed from it was unmistakably Rachel's voice. "Jason, don't you understand how I feel? You married the wrong person. You should have been with me, not my sister." The room fell silent again. Olivia gasped, staring at Rachel. Rachel stood speechless. Jason played another message. "If you don't leave my sister, I don't know what might happen to her and the baby. We're destined to be together. I'll remove anything that stands in our way." "This must be edited," Martha shouted. "Jason, you're just running from responsibility." "Do you really think so?" Jason calmly asked. Then he took out another document. "These are records of your chats with Rachel. As it happens, Rachel backed them up to the cloud." Jason began reading the contents aloud. Martha's messages to Rachel contained detailed plans to take Olivia's child. They included methods for Rachel to legally adopt Olivia's baby, necessary documents, and even plans to create false medical records claiming Olivia was mentally unstable. And most surprisingly, Jason opened another envelope. Rachel's infertility is a lie. Greg suddenly stood up. What? She simply didn't want to get pregnant. Jason picked up medical records. Greg, you might have thought she was going to a fertility clinic, but what she was actually receiving was contraception. Rachel, is this true? Greg's voice trembled. Everyone in the room turned their gaze to Rachel. After a moment of silence, she suddenly exploded with emotion. Yes. It's all true, she shouted. Because Olivia always has everything. At school, at home, she was always the best. Tears welled up in her eyes. And then she got Jason too, when I liked him first. Greg stepped back, shocked. Our entire marriage was a lie. No. You were important to me, but... Rachel was at a loss for words. So you tried to seduce Jason, Olivia finally spoke. Her voice trembled, but there was strength in it. And tried to take my child. Olivia, you don't understand. Rachel cried. I wanted a baby too. But things didn't go as I wanted. So you tried to steal someone else's child. Carol said angrily. That's criminal. Martha also stood up and began making excuses. I was thinking of Rachel. Olivia has always been strong, so I thought she could manage on her own. But Rachel is different, she needs help. Be quiet, Mom, Olivia said firmly. Her eyes mixed with anger and sadness. Now I understand everything you and Rachel have been doing behind my back. And the real reason Jason left. She looked up at Jason. I never understood. Why you left without explanation, but you were trying to protect us. Jason nodded. Olivia, I'm really sorry I couldn't tell you the truth. But with Rachel's threats continuing, I didn't want to put extra stress on you. Especially during your pregnancy. He squeezed her hand. I was working with a lawyer to gather evidence and prepare to protect you and the baby. In the corner of the room, Greg was confronting Rachel. 3 years, you've been deceiving me. His voice was deeply wounded. Greg, please. Rachel tried to grab his arm, but Greg pulled away. It's over, he said simply. Then he raised his voice toward the center of the room. Olivia, Jason, I'm truly sorry. I knew nothing about this. Carol had already taken out her phone. I'm calling the police. This is clearly a case of threatening behavior. Martha suddenly seemed to panic. The police? No, bringing family matters outside. This isn't a family matter, Martha, Carol said coldly. This is a crime. Olivia was trembling in Jason's arms. He held her tightly and whispered, it's okay now. You and the baby, you're both safe. The other guests looked at Olivia and Jason with surprise and empathy. Their expressions clearly showed support for the couple and condemnation for Martha and Rachel. I'm glad you came back, Olivia said tearfully to Jason. But what happens now? Jason touched her cheek and answered, we'll take it one step at a time. What matters is that I'll never leave again. Olivia nodded at those words, feeling a sense of security she hadn't felt for a long time. In her womb, the baby moved slightly. As if sensing that everything was finally starting to move in the right direction. Olivia and Jason found a quiet moment alone in the kitchen. In the living room, Carol was explaining the situation to the other guests, while Martha and Rachel sat separately, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Greg stood by the window, silently staring at the scenery outside. Will you tell me everything? Olivia asked, holding Jason's hand. When did Rachel? Jason exhaled deeply. Actually, it started before we met. I met Rachel at a hospital charity event. She was already dating Greg but showed an abnormal interest in me. He continued, choosing his words carefully, when I was introduced to you, my heart was already set on you. I felt sorry for Rachel, but she was just an acquaintance to me, and she had a partner. I thought there wouldn't be any problem. Olivia nodded quietly. But Rachel didn't think so. Right. At first, it was minor harassment. Occasional strange messages, appearing and pretending it was a coincidence. I thought it stopped after we got married. Jason paused. But from the day you announced your pregnancy, her behavior began to escalate. The pregnancy was the trigger. Olivia placed her hand on her belly. She appeared at my office saying I made a mistake in destiny. And gradually, her words became more threatening. Jason's expression darkened. My concern that she might harm you or the baby grew, so I consulted a lawyer. His advice was to gather evidence and to get close to Rachel to reveal her plans. So that's why you left. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. Jason gently touched her cheek. I couldn't tell you the truth because I was worried about you during your pregnancy. I didn't want to give you extra stress. And he hesitated a little. If I had told you, I couldn't predict what Rachel might do. I needed to distance myself for your safety. But even one message. I wanted to contact you every day. But Rachel was around you, and I didn't know what she was monitoring. So my only way to know how you were doing was through your father, William. Olivia's eyes widened. Dad knew too. He provided wonderful support. He helped gather evidence and was always concerned about your safety. Jason smiled. Actually, At that moment, the front door opened, and William Tanner appeared. He quickly assessed the situation in the room and headed straight to the kitchen. Olivia. He embraced his daughter strongly. Jason called me. Are you all right? Dad. Olivia shed tears of relief in her father's arms. Why did you come? I got an emergency call from Jason. I came right away. William sent a grateful look to Jason. Have the police arrived yet? They just did. 2 police officers entered the kitchen. They explained that they needed to briefly hear from everyone to understand the situation. Everyone was gathered in the living room, and the police officers began taking statements one by one. Martha suddenly stood up and shouted, "This is all a misunderstanding." Martha, William's voice was low and stern. What you did is unforgivable. This has nothing to do with you. Martha argued. What right do you have after leaving the house? I have the right to protect my daughter and grandchild, William answered firmly. Even though we're separated, I am still Olivia's father. The police officers turned back to Martha and Rachel, saying, We'd like to discuss this matter in more detail at the station. Rachel suddenly began laughing hysterically. Right, I'm always the villain. Always. Olivia is always the perfect daughter, perfect sister, perfect wife. And now she'll be the perfect mother. Olivia quietly stood up. Rachel, I'm not perfect. I was never as attractive or social as you. But I've just been walking my own path honestly. Her voice trembled but had strength. I really can't understand why you tried to take my baby. This is beyond mere jealousy. You don't understand. Rachel shouted. Always, always. Her voice broke off, and she suddenly collapsed into a chair. Greg spoke up for the first time, Olivia, Jason. I'm truly sorry. I knew nothing. Deep sadness and shame were evident on his face. I thought Rachel was receiving fertility treatment. That she would do such things. Olivia sent him a gentle look. It's not your responsibility, Greg. The police officers urged Martha and Rachel to come to the station. Rachel seemed to have lost the will to resist and quietly complied. Martha kept repeating, "I was thinking of you," to Olivia until the end. After the two were escorted out of the room, a heavy silence fell. Greg bowed briefly to Jason, saying, "I'd like to hear the details tomorrow," before leaving. The remaining guests also began to leave at Carol's prompting. "Olivia, I'll call you tomorrow," Carol said, embracing her friend tightly. "If you need anything, just say the word." In the end, only Olivia, Jason, and William remained. Olivia, looking exhausted, sank deep into the sofa. "Unbelievable," she murmured. "We're family." William sat next to his daughter and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Olivia, Martha, and Rachel's actions are unforgivable. But for now, you should think about getting some rest." Olivia looked up at her father. "Dad, you were in contact with Jason." William nodded. "When he first contacted me, I was angry. But after hearing the circumstances, I understood how much he wanted to protect you and the baby." He nodded toward Jason. "He truly loves you." Jason took Olivia's hand. "Olivia, we don't need to decide what to do right now. But if you'll forgive me, I want to start over." "Start over?" Olivia searched his eyes. "Yes. I never want to leave you again. Together with you and the baby, as a family." His voice was earnest. Olivia was silent for a while, but eventually squeezed his hand back. "It might take time, but I think we can overcome this." A relieved smile spread across Jason's face. William watched the two with satisfaction. "Well, you too." William stood up and looked around the room. "This place is full of bad memories from today. How about spending some time at my cottage? It's a quiet place with a view of the ocean." Olivia nodded with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Dad." Jason gently put his arm around her shoulder and whispered, "Let's make good memories from now on." The baby in Olivia's womb moved again. This time more strongly, as if in agreement. She smiled and placed her hand on her belly. 2 months later, cheers echoed in the obstetrics ward of Boston General Hospital. "Congratulations, Olivia. It's a healthy baby girl." Olivia's sweaty face showed a mixture of fatigue and happiness as she reached out to the tiny baby who had begun to cry. Jason stood beside his wife, squeezing her hand, tears in his eyes. "You're truly amazing," he said in a voice trembling with emotion. "For giving birth to such a beautiful girl." "Lily," Olivia whispered, cradling the baby in her arms. "Lily Hope Brown. That's her name." "Perfect," Jason nodded. "A flower of hope, perfect for a new beginning." The C-section delivery had gone as planned. Both mother and baby were healthy, and the doctors looked relieved. Carol had attended her friend's delivery and was now in the hallway sharing the good news with William. On discharge day, Olivia and Jason took their new child home. It wasn't their previous apartment, but a small house in the suburbs purchased with William's help. A banner reading, "Welcome Home Lily," hung at the entrance, and inside, the living room was furnished in gentle colors with a baby crib for Lily. "Today marks the beginning of our new life," Jason gently embraced Olivia's shoulder. Their new family's happiness gradually dispelled the dark shadows of the past. Rachel received probation for threatening behavior and was ordered by the court to undergo psychiatric counseling. Greg had filed for divorce and already moved to another state. Martha was isolated from the family, and divorce proceedings with William had begun. On a sunny Saturday a year later, Olivia and Jason held a small ceremony attended only by close friends. It was a special ritual to renew their marriage vows. 1-year-old Lily, in her father's arms, gazed at her mother's wedding dress. "I vow," Olivia said, looking into Jason's eyes, "to face any storm together with you." "I also vow," Jason responded, "to protect you and Lily for the rest of my life." William cherished his time with his granddaughter and made sure to visit every weekend. Nothing gave him more pleasure than sitting with Lily on his knee, reading her stories. Meanwhile, Rachel had begun to reflect on her actions. She was seriously committed to therapy, beginning to understand the extent of the damage her obsession and jealousy had caused. Martha reflected on her mistakes in solitude and one day sent Olivia a letter of apology. Olivia read it but wasn't ready to forgive her yet. One evening, Olivia sat on the porch holding Lily, watching the sunset with Jason. "Do you think," she said quietly, "that someday the family's wounds will heal?" Jason gently put his arm around her shoulder. "It will take time, but I think there's a possibility. But for now," he kissed Lily's head gently, "the most important thing is to cherish our little family." Olivia nodded, looking at her husband and daughter. Her life had taken an unexpected direction, but in the end, she had found true happiness.